Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, as Volume 2 of Matty Loves Podcast continues. I'm your host, Matt DeSimone. Joined with me, as always, Dr. Tom Lucas, the street shaman of geekdom. No.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Doing good. We got a little Bob Ross on here.
Yeah, I've learned something about you that you chill out to Bob Ross, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Man. I do chill out to Bob Ross. I think anybody that knows me, I mean, you know, outside of or has known me for a long time knows that I definitely gets down with the Bob Ross.
Have you ever wanted to paint?
I'm a horrible painter.
Yeah.
I can draw, I can doodle, but there's just something about using a brush. It just doesn't work for me. So instead, I just let Bob Ross paint all my paintings.
I'll tell you, man, it's amazing. It's like nothing, and then
bam! I know. Bob Ross, he pisses me off sometimes as I'm like, what the hell are you doing, Bob? What are you doing, Bobby?
Oh my God, the visualization abilities this guy had, He could see it.
Indeed.
He could see it before it was ever there.
Yeah, and honest to goodness, he didn't even see it before we was there, It's like he has a general idea of the style of painting he's doing today, and he's just going to show us some techniques and turn it into something that he could sell for thousands of dollars, It's rather ridiculous.
And you grab all these right off of Amazon, huh?
They have seasons 21 through 23.
Okay.
And then I think selected... I think you can watch all of 21 and 23 and you have to pay for 22. And don't think I have not thought about spending that $4.99 for 20 premium Bob Ross episodes.
Yeah, I mean, what's $4.99, man?
Right, exactly. I just left the comic book store, so...
How much did you spend this week?
$51.
$51. And how many books did $51 get you?
$51 got me about 15 comics.
Okay.
That's solid, man.
Yeah. For your entertainment dollar.
Yeah. And I didn't buy any trash this week, so I know, except for Superman 48, but I know, I'm going to be entertained, but I buy the Superman 48 because I am a completist. We've talked about that.
And you're just riding the storm out.
I am. With my fingers crossed. And honestly, now that DC has just announced that in the summer, they're going back to the number ones, and it's not a reboot, but a rebirth.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Superman will become the greatest book in comics as it has never been.
So, DC Comics is having a rebirth.
Yes.
Afterbirth.
That's the joke. Yeah, that is definitely the joke.
So I've gone for the obvious without even knowing it. So, what is the concept that they are wrapping around going back and doing all these number ones?
Okay, so one thing over the past few days that I've read, now we were recording this on Wednesday the 27th, so this is going to be up on the 29th, all right, the Friday.
Right.
So a couple days ago, I read that Mark Silvestri is doing a Batman book.
Okay.
All right, now Mark Silvestri, if you people don't know, his claim to fame early on was... artist on Uncanny X-Men.
Right.
One of those artists that Chris Claremont found, roaming the cons and saw something in him, much like, others. Or maybe that isn't even the story. That's just what I like to romanticize about the whole thing.
Okay.
But anyway, and so Silvestri also then left Marvel with the Image crew, as he's one of the original founders of Image, and he started drawing books like Witchblade.
Okay.
All right, which had a TV show and various other different properties that are in and around that universe, including The Darkness, which had its own video game.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, his art for me, I've always enjoyed it. Actually, he did a run of New X-Men with Grant Morrison in the early 2000s, which was Grant Morrison's Days of Future Past.
Okay.
And it was wacky, but it looked beautiful because Silvestri was drawing the X-Men again.
Right.
His style is very much akin to Jim Lee. I've always kind of considered those two, and then Michael Turner was like the hybrid of those two.
Okay, it just pops.
Oh man, yeah. Like Mark Silvestri's art, you see it and you're like, wow. Yeah. But from what I hear, the book that he's reading is an After Convergence Batman book. Okay. Who gives a shit about Convergence, man? Right? Come on, DC. No one cares. If you're going to do Batman based on the Batman before New 52, then why don't this rebirth be the rebirth of the old DC universe? Is what I'm hoping. Yeah. Is that we're going back to just the regular characters. Let's just get it going again, you know? Just throw them right back into whatever. Make shit up like you were doing. But enough of this New 52, we're going to lie to you and pull the wool over your eyes bullshit, man. I'm just, in the beginning, I was so gung-ho and I was so stoked. And the first 3-4 months in, I was digging it.
Are you talking New 52?
Yeah, I was a little upset about Superman books, but that was fine because Batman was kicking ass and Aquaman was the shit when it first started in New 52. Green Lantern, same way, you get after like month 6, then all of a sudden these like creators just started leaving books left and right. Yeah. What is going on here, And they haven't been able to recover ever since. And
what was the scuttlebutt?
I think the scuttlebutt was you had these creators who are getting something that they feel like they can mold into their own deal in this new DC universe. And then the editorial staff is like, no, because it's nothing like what these people are used to. Well, what's the point in doing that when you're totally rebooting your whole entire structure of your comics and everything? Aren't you going to want to do something different? I felt that they were too worried about people thinking that it was too different and not like the old stuff, They didn't think that there was enough of a bridge in some of these stories connecting it to the stories we grew up loving or whatever. That's the problem they faced. Now, DC, I've always said that DC, that is a YP. And YP, not IP. YP means a you problem. Right. That's on them. All this is on them. And they're really lucky that they're making so much money in the TV area and some Hollywood that they're being able to continue publishing comic books, because people, if you don't know, the only reason we're getting comic books every Wednesday, well, the main reason, besides us devout fans spending our hard-earned money on these books every week, is because the movies and the TV shows are raking in cash, right? And the comics aren't. And that's why a lot of the stories right now in your big twos, DC and Marvel, have been about as thin as the thinner that he threw on the paint or the stretched cans.
Well, yeah, I've said it before. Is with all the Marvel phases of movies, just as an example, we're just a generation away from people who only know these characters from the visual from movies,
absolutely,
or TV, absolutely. And that's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. And I look back too, and I think about some of those properties that were going in a certain direction that had some TV shows planned or even comics or even movies planned for certain characters that didn't get off the ground. And you'd have to think maybe with, I don't know, a character like Superman, if one of those movies that they made in the past ended up getting made then, what effect, if any, would it have had on the comics and the character from there on, Right. After that. Now, you were telling me earlier today that you recently saw on Showtime the what was it? The Death and Return of Superman.
The Death of Superman Lives.
Okay, the Death of Superman Lives. So give them a little bit of backstory on how that what that was. Basically.
This is one of those great movies that was never made.
Right. I read it about it in Cinescape, and was just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
It starts out with a young Kevin Smith being basically handed a title and asked to write a Superman script. The original title was Superman Reborn, and Kevin Smith changed it to Superman Lives. He wrote a draft. Some people liked it, some people didn't. It got some traction, and eventually it got Tim Burton attached to it. And as soon as it got Tim Burton attached to it, Kevin Smith was fired, and another screenwriter, Tim Burton's guy,
Right.
was brought in, and he was in it for a while, and then finally there was a third screenwriter that was brought in as well. It was to star Nicolas Cage as Superman, and Tim Burton was really going to highlight the fact that he was an alien.
Right.
And it was a riff on the death of Superman from the early 90s.
Was Doomsday supposed to be the bad guy in the film? Who was the antagonist?
He was an early bad guy.
Okay.
The main baddie is Brainiac.
Right.
Yeah. And Superman dies like at the end of the first act. And then he regenerates with this Kryptonian suit that regenerates him, and then he comes back. So,
what happens while he's regenerating?
He kind of is like laying around, and and they have shown production stills over the years. They've been floating around the internet, and you may have seen a clear plastic suit with lighting tubes underneath it, and that was to be his regeneration suit. That wasn't to be
the suit. Right. Now, they do have pictures of Nicolas Cage in the suit.
Yeah, they have a Polaroid of him doing a costume test.
Yes, a costume test. And it's like he's wearing like a blouse, almost. Like a woman's top, because it almost falls off of his shoulders.
It has a really weird neck.
Yeah.
It exposes a lot of his skin, and it's very feminine looking. And then also, too, he was wearing a long hair wig that had not been styled.
Right.
They just shoved it on his head. So basically what you were seeing was someone like in the middle of getting dressed. And it floated around the internet like, oh, this was going to be it.
Right.
This was the final product.
Right, yeah.
And the fact is that they were still trying to figure out what materials to use to make the suit, what to make the cape out of, how to style the hair. Like, none of it had been figured out.
Did you dig the S? Because it was more streamlined and kind of angular.
Yeah, it
was like the electric Superman when he went blue. It was like that S. I think that's what they were going for.
I don't mind.
I never had a problem with it, especially like the teaser posters, that they had made with just the silver S.
Yeah.
And it was very much like 1988 and the Batman posters, a big S,
right.
Yeah. I really want to see that documentary because that just, it always has fascinated me. And Kevin Smith has talked about it a bunch on his podcast.
Right.
Various podcasts about working on that for the brief period of time he was on the project. But I've always wanted to know, what in the hell happened? What happened?
Well, basically, at the 11th hour, Warner Brothers had just had so many bombs in a row and had lost so much money on so many projects that the sticker price scared them to death.
Right.
And they just pulled the plug. They were about 3 weeks from starting to shoot.
And they dumped a good amount of money in this
film. They spent like $15 million just in the pre-production.
And Nick Cage made his money too.
Yeah.
That was the sick thing about it. It was like Nick Cage got paid.
He got paid, and Tim Burton got paid like $4 million just for his time, and
ridiculous.
You watch this documentary, and what was refreshing about it is that it did not come to bury the film. It was an exploration of what could have been.
Right.
And Tim Burton is the one who brought Batman to life in 1990, 91, whatever it was, 89.
Well, yeah, 89.
89.
Summer of 89.
Michael Keaton. And a lot of people really love that film.
Sure.
And love that Batman.
I'm one of them.
And so he was going to do something very different with Superman. One of the things that he says is that most of my films are kind of filmed in the dark. They're films that are made in the shadows. He says, this was going to be my daylight picture. I was going to show people that I could make a film that was daylight.
Wait, they interviewed Tim Burton?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he talks about it. They interview him. They interview...
Cage?
No.
Oh.
They just get some little, audio bits of Cage. But they have some great footage of them doing that costume test and a lot of conversations. There's Nick Cage in it, but it's from him back in the day.
It's such a shame that, Nick Cage never really got put on any of the newer Superman, films just because of he is a huge Superman fan.
Right.
He has a son named Cal.
Right.
And it sucks because I bet during this period of time, man, he really wanted to get this thing done.
I'm sure. He was really into it. You can tell. And also, too, his concept for Clark Kent was really quite interesting, is that he was going to kind of play it like he didn't really understand
being human.
And so, instead of Clark Kent strolling around the offices in a 3-piece suit and glasses, he'd wear a blazer and a Mickey Mouse t-shirt because he didn't know that those two pieces of clothing don't go together.
Wow.
And,
So he hadn't been on Earth very long then, if that's what he's doing. If that's what the character
properly
was doing.
Socialized.
Yeah. I mean, being from Smallville, that's one thing, but they would have needed to make Smallville really small for him to be a grown man doing this. But I like that. Yeah. That's interesting, and it makes sense, too.
Right. That he doesn't really know our ways, that kind of thing, or only has this idea of it. And so, at the end of the day, the documentary does make you think, man, I think I really would have liked to have seen this movie. As opposed to, oh my God, did we dodge a bullet?
Right.
Kind of thing. It's right up there with Yorodowski's Dune, which is a documentary about another one of those great movies that was never made, that they did so much work to prepare, and then they never did it. So it showed up on Showtime the other day, I think last Saturday, and I was like, "Oh, I'm watching this." Yeah, that's what I'm doing with my afternoon, and so I'm sure that there are many other ways to find this online.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
It's available in many places, and I really recommend that you check it out.
Cool, man.
Because you're a big Superman guy.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear what you have to say about what they had to say.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely going to be looking into finding that. I feel like over the past year or so, man, there have been so many awesome documentaries for geeky stuff, like the Superman, the death of Superman Lives, like you were talking about, and then also the Ninja Turtles documentary.
I did not see it. So how was that?
It's amazing, man. It's so good. It basically, it takes you basically ABC through their whole timeline of developing the Turtles and selling the Turtles, and the day that they realize, oh my God, we have definitely figured something out here, you know. And then from there, skyrocketing to success. Then the issues and the problems and the split, and then the able to figure everything out, get back together, and still write good stories, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Really, and it gave me the feels, man. And as a kid, I wasn't a gigantic Ninja Turtles fan, because at that age, when the Turtles really started to at the peak of their popularity, I was starting to get more into just comics and pro wrestling as a kid, and not action figures and stuff like that. And so, I wasn't a gigantic Turtles fan, but I definitely loved the movies as a kid and everything. And it was just a really well-made documentary. Another good one is the Image Comics documentary.
Oh, I wasn't even aware that there was one. Where did you catch that?
I think I watched it streaming on some bullshit website online.
Okay.
I might, if I can find it, I'll send you a link.
Yeah. So is that about the birth of Image Comics and its history?
Yep.
Basically?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's crazy because, there were so many things watching that documentary that, I didn't even know. Marvel was nearly bankrupt right after all those guys, 4 years after they left, they were nearly bankrupt. And they called up Image and they were like, would you guys be interested in buying Marvel Comics?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right.
Okay, and then you go back and you read the Image books that they were putting out then, and it's just straight shit, story-wise. The art is amazing. Right. But if they would have gotten a if there had been a group of writers that were just as young as they were and just as hungry as they were during that time, the stories that they could have told, oh my God, there's no telling. But because Image only had about 3 guys that were that had really good writing chops, and being young and everything, just the stories are just paper thin, but the art, is amazing. But they sold so many books, man. So many books. I mean, back then, your book is getting canceled if you're not selling 100,000 copies.
Right.
Okay, they're lucky to sell 50,000 copies on a top title now.
Right.
That's crazy. This past year, with the release of the new Star Wars books for Marvel, those would have been the highest selling comic books that they had. Star Wars #1 sold the most copies than any comic had in forever.
How many copies did it sell?
Over 1 million.
Over 1 million.
Yeah, over 1 million.
Wow.
Star Wars won though, so there are going to be a lot of copies produced for one.
Yeah.
Because golly, I couldn't think about how many like Loot Crate had its own exclusive, and you got to think about the money that comes from that they're getting or whatever. There were so many exclusives that came with whatever that you get that extra money in there, but still. That the Image, it was just fascinating how much money was just being thrown around, not even thinking about it back then. And they're 22, 23, 24 years old.
It's electric, man. Can you imagine what that was like for them?
I know. Rob Liefeld. We were talking about this earlier, okay? The comparisons. We've got the Deadpool movie coming out here in just a few weeks, which is super exciting.
Yeah, it's
what
gonna
a
be fun.
Valentine's Day weekend for any dorky dude,
Right, yeah.
Guess what we're doing?
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll take you out to dinner and everything, but then we're going to go see my movie.
Yeah, right.
One character that Rob Liefeld, when he was a kid and first at Marvel, really wanted to do was Deathstroke.
Right.
No, this is
and
documented.
Deathstroke's my jam, man.
This is documented.
I'm a huge fan of that character. I was a reader of the Teen Titans, era when Deathstroke came on the scene, and he was the tormentor of the Teen Titans.
Yes.
For a long time, getting sleeper agents inside the team and just, oh man, always there just to really
the Judas contract.
Yeah, yes. Terra.
Yes, Terra. Oh, I love
sister
Terra
Geoforce,
too.
yeah.
Damn, man. Geoforce is awesome too.
Right?
Ah.
So, I really wasn't kind of paying attention when Deadpool came on the scene. I think that was one of those periods where I wasn't really reading a lot of books, or I was just strictly reading indie books.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And Deadpool was basically Rob Liefeld creating his Deathstroke. Yeah. Without working for DC, because he did work for DC previously. He did some Hawk and Dove stuff, I do remember. I have some of it, actually.
Really?
And he wanted to do Deathstroke then, and they were like, no. And then he went to Marvel, and then, Deadpool came about of it. And if you people don't know, Deadpool started out as just a merc.
Yeah.
Didn't really have much of the mouth he has now, but he was definitely a smart aleck, But he was a cold-blooded killer. He was crazy.
Yeah.
And he was a part of the Weapon 10 program that Wolverine was a part of, and he was, really tampered with wrongly, I guess I should say.
Yes.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Oh, Florida.
Right? Yeah, Bob Ross is about to get busy on the state of Florida here with this, folks. It's on Amazon. Bob Ross season 21. Anyway, getting back to the Deathstroke Deadpool comparison. So basically, So Rob Liefeld created his Deathstroke, and then, people started to notice, hey, these two people are kind of similar. I mean, Deathstroke's real name.
Oh, Slade Wilson.
And Deadpool's real name is
Wade Wilson.
Right.
Yeah.
So, are they brothers? Or I would have just
brothers from another mother.
Yeah, I would have gone Wade Slilson.
And the thing for me was, I always thought the Taskmaster was the Marvel Deathstroke.
Right.
Yeah. Their costumes are very close too.
Yeah, you are. No, that's.
So was Deathstroke a riff on the Taskmaster, And then Deadpool's a riff on Deathstroke. I don't know when Taskmaster.
I want to say Taskmaster debuted before Deathstroke.
I feel like he did too,
because they've got that like fish gill, the scale,
and the
armor.
big cuffed boots,
the swashbucklers.
Yeah, the swashbucklers, exactly.
So we were talking about just a second ago, talking about Teen Titans, but also in old DC, classic DC, you recently came across some books.
Oh yeah,
that you were saying you were really enjoying it. If you don't know, Tom was sick last week. We already had a show in the can.
Yes,
but he was sick last week. So whenever Tom is sick and home by himself, hating it because I know he hates it when he's sick, I always love to hear him tell me cabin fever style stories.
Yeah.
The last one we got was when he had back surgery. So this time you read what?
Okay, so we got a spot in Orlando called the Coliseum of Comics, and it's one of those stores that actually has a bunch of like $quarter books. You just gotta like sort through them, and they got all kinds of junk in there, and stuff like that. You gotta really look. And some time ago, I had found a bunch of old Justice League quarterlies from the Keith Giffen, DeMatteis era, which is when basically these guys were given the Justice League and not allowed to have any of the core members except for Batman to stop by on occasion.
B team.
Yeah, it's B team.
C team.
Your leader is Martian Manhunter.
So there
and you get Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Guy Gardner as the Green Lantern, Fire Ice, Rocket Red, and whatever other knucklehead is Metamorpho.
Firestorm. Did you already say Firestorm?
No, Fire and Ice.
Fire and Ice.
These two chicks.
Okay, yeah.
And
Ice was Guy Gardner's.
Yes. She's a Scandinavian princess.
I'm getting confused with Killer Frost and Firestorm's relationship in Crisis on
Infinite Earths. Yeah. Totally different deal. So, I had a bunch of these books, and they were on the shelf, and I'd forgotten about them, and I was in my office, and I was like, I need something light to read, that I can kick back, and I pulled up. I bought like 8 quarterlies. They're from like 91 to 92.
No, and, are they oversized or were they just?
They're 84-page books.
Okay, yeah, okay,
yeah. And there was a time where they would do 4 a year,
right?
And you get one big story, and then 2 small ones.
Okay,
and it's on crappy pulp paper, and the artwork is not really anything to write home about. It tells the story.
Right.
But there's not going to be any awards won. They've aged. These books are like 25 years old, and they weren't kept in Mylar, so they have a little bit of a musk about them.
Right.
And, the best part is, too, are all these advertisements. The classic comic book ad page with all the little $20 little classified ads, learn how to draw superheroes,
right.
Grow hair on your chest, like all these little ads.
Or like that one page where it's like all of the comic retailers in the country are all printed on one page, and at the top is like a graphic of a hero saying, buy comics here!
Yes. Or the big comic convention that's going to be in New York that year.
Right. And then you've got then you have like your EverQuest and your like Dragon Age advertisements.
Oh, there was an ad for Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, Ravencroft or whatever, the vampire one. I always remember that one.
Ravenloft,
that's it. The dude's like holding the chick and he's looking up and he's bleeding from the mouth.
Because in your fantasy, in your Swords and Sorcery, you wanted a vampire. Right? Of course you did. And then it was pretty popular, but, whatever.
So who's the monster heel in these books? Is it just pretty much like villain of the issue, or do they have something that's going on in all these quarterlies?
Well, in one quarterly, Guy, Ice, Fire, and Booster went to a New Age fair somewhere in New York. And
a new age fair being this is
psychics and tarot card readers.
I'm thinking of this is all the technology from the future.
Right.
Okay.
No, they went to like a hippie street fair.
Okay. All right, cool.
And Ice buys a crystal, which Guy accidentally cracks. And it turns out that there is a demonic presence inside the crystal that it takes over Ice, and she grows 30 feet tall. She becomes a 30-foot tall demon, and she starts tearing up New York, and they got to fight her. And then
That's good times right there. Wow.
And then they throw in one of the things they did during that run of the Justice League is they did a parody of Captain America called General Glory. And General Glory was a patriotic hero from the 40s who had been frozen.
Did he wear like a hat like George Washington?
No.
Oh, okay.
He has a cowl with an eagle on his brow.
Okay.
And
why did they do this?
And the thing was Guy Gardner is this, in those books, he's this loudmouth, crass guy.
Right.
He certainly doesn't fit the classic Lantern Corps kind of person, He's
which is a more or less police officer in a sense.
Yeah.
Guy is your police officer on the Shield, more or less. He's going to throw that phone book right at your head.
Oh yeah. And Guy needed to be corrected a little bit in the book. So what they did is they had him be a fan of these patriotic World War II comic books called General Glory and his sidekick Bernie, and or Ernie. It's Ernie, and he also has like a bulldog too with a little starry cape thing. But anyway, they bring General Glory to life, just like Captain America was a comic book character, and then the Avengers found him floating in ice. The Justice League finds General Glory, and he's really not equipped to go out and fight with the Justice League.
Because he doesn't have the powers of the superheroes. Super soldier serum.
He's just basically an acrobat.
Guy. He's just a guy, right.
And but he's very old school, conservative, and he's always correcting Guy's behavior.
Okay.
And trying to it's like you shouldn't curse, you should
be more of a gentleman.
And all that kind of stuff. And so it leads to a lot of funny interactions. This was the same run of the Justice League that gave us Lobo, by the way, that introduced Lobo to the DC universe. Yes. I hold that run particularly dear. I really enjoyed those books.
So, if they made Justice League international film, would you rather see? All right, I got 2 actors to give you here. 3. Actually, I'm going to give you 3 actors.
Okay.
To play Lobo. Okay. First, The Rock, which has been rumored, but I think it's going to be Shazam. All right.
I see him as Shazam.
Right. Okay.
Really, I see him as Black Adam.
Danny Trejo. As Lobo. Little old,
little short.
Right. And then my third is, what's his name? From Biker Gang show.
What, Sons of Anarchy?
Sons of Anarchy. What's his name? Charlie Hunham.
Oh, as Lobo?
As Lobo.
No.
All right. Then what about the other dude on that show that played Hellboy?
Oh, Ron Perlman, right? Ron Perlman could be Lobo, I suppose.
I mean, maybe 15 years ago.
Right. That's the thing, is Ron's kind of pushing it these days.
And I think that if they did a Lobo movie, they wouldn't make him all, like, ugly.
Right.
They'd make him, like, Edward from Twilight, I think, kind of. Like, he'd be kind of dirty, but dirty in a way that, chicks would probably see him and want to, like, clean him off.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Like, it's...
out of the 3 you present, The Rock is the way you gotta go.
Yeah, I think The Rock... I've always thought The Rock would be a killer Lobo.
Right.
Because he's quick.
Yeah.
You can make him look real gritty, and he'd still be able to kick a whole lot of ass. But I'd also like to see him as, like, Black Adam.
Well, I think he's the perfect Black Adam.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at him, and I can see that black shirt with the lightning bolt on him, like, instantly.
And the eyebrows. He's got the eyebrows.
He's got the eyebrows, totally. So, I would like to see that. In the Batman Brave and the Bold,
Uh-huh.
they did a few episodes with the Blue Beetle and Booster Gold.
Yes.
That tapped directly into that era of the Justice League.
Yes.
And Will Wheaton did the voice of Blue Beetle.
And that was
perfect.
And that was when you said that Booster Gold just wanted to go back in time and have one more adventure with...
Ted Cord.
Ted Cord, right.
Who at this point is dead. Yeah.
And it's so awesome in the show how at the start of the show, Ted Cord was already dead because they had Jaime Reyes as the Blue Beetle on the show.
Right.
And so Ted Cord was like this legend, which is awesome because at the end of the day, Ted Cord was super smart.
Yeah.
And that's about it. He had a cool gun.
Yeah.
He had, a badass vehicle.
Right.
One of the top 5 in DC history in my
you like his big flying beetle.
Oh man, it's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what Alan Moore modeled Owlman's ship.
Sure, because Blue Beetle was a Charlton character, and Owlman is his version.
So I want to ask you about one more book that you had recently talked about reading. And that is The Doom That Came to Gotham.
The Doom That Came to Gotham, that was a fine read.
I've never read this. Before you talked about it, our buddy Chris Bennett, he had talked about it before. What is The Doom That Came to Gotham? It's like Lovecraft, right?
It's a Batman story told with Lovecraftian flair.
And what do you mean when you say Lovecraftian flair?
Okay, well, Lovecraft was, the guy who brought us essentially cosmic horror, this idea that there is something that is just beyond the fabric of time and space, and it is not pretty, it's monstrous. And there's these big alien gods that sleep, and they sleep deep under the earth, and there's mysterious death cults that want to awaken them and cause Armageddon and do all these kinds of horrible, dark, evil things, It's not the universal monsters. It's not Frankenstein or Dracula or the Mummy or anything like that. And, of course, you have characters like Cthulhu, who's sort of like their big heavy of that pantheon of alien gods.
But this thing out there, I've always figured with Lovecraft as him visualizing just a thing. Like, it's not physical in form, maybe sometimes. It's just like...
There's all kinds of creatures in the Lovecraft world. Some of them are presents. Some of them are definitely monsters of a sort. And so, The Doom That Came to Gotham is a Mike Mignola joint, and he did the cover art and he wrote the story. And the artist's name escapes me right at the moment, but it's a guy who did a lot of the BRPD stuff. The Hellboy agency stories. I can't think of his name. I'm pretty sure that's the guy. But anyway, we have kind of an Elseworld story. It's the turn of the last century. It's the early 1900s. And Bruce and Dick Grayson and Jason Todd and Tim Drake have been on a ship for like 20 years searching for the mysteriously disappeared Cobblepot expedition.
This is an Elseworld story.
It feels like one.
Okay.
It's an Elseworld story, even though it's not, doesn't have Elseworld slapped anywhere on it. Okay? They find Cobblepot's expedition, and Cobblepot's expedition found something terrible frozen under the ice.
Oh, boy.
Yes. And
is it a sea monster?
It's a monster from another world. That's the Lovecraft touch.
Here we go. All right.
Bruce hightails it back to Gotham, and it follows him.
And what time period is this?
It's like the early 1900s.
Okay, so this isn't like Gotham by Gaslight.
Correct.
This is further on after that.
It's further on, and he puts on the bad outfit for a while to do some investigating. But he's not Batman.
So what's the Bat costume like then? Is this more of like a spelunking gear? Or?
Well, it's like baggy.
Okay.
It's baggy. It's got a cowl and a cape. He's got I don't know what you call those kind of coats where it has like a big square piece with sort of buttons that go around the...
A duster?
Is that what it is?
Like it hangs off the shoulders a little bit?
But it's got like the torso has like a sort of a chest piece of cloth
that you like
square,
kind of pull over and button it.
Yeah.
Okay, like the Rocketeer.
Yes,
okay.
yeah, kind of a Rocketeer sort of look.
Right,
And
all right.
they bring in some of the other Batman mythos. They bring in the Man Bat. They bring in Ra's al Ghul.
What's Ra's al Ghul in this story? What does he play?
He is a guy who discovered an ancient evil book which killed him. And Talia has finally recovered the book, and she's going to resurrect her father.
With the Lazarus Pit, I'm guessing. Okay.
And this cursed book.
Okay.
That's very Lovecraftian kind of touch, or cursed books with horrible dark spells inside them that will corrupt your mind and cause the end of the world.
Don't read this book.
Yes, that kind of stuff. And then we also get a little Etrigan. The demon.
Is it accurate, like rhymes and everything?
He doesn't really rhyme too much, no.
Okay. No,
he doesn't really rhyme too much.
Sometimes with Etrigan that can get
it's
a little...
a pretty light rhyme.
Yeah.
Well,
that's good, though. I mean, as long as... I like Etrigan not rapping, but I like Etrigan, like, using that iambic pentameter to its fullest when he is, like... pissed.
Yeah.
That's the best.
I've always been a fan of Etrigan.
Yeah. I would love to have a nice solid demon collection.
DC, to me, their supernatural pantheon of characters can't be beat. You got Constantine and Etrigan and Swamp Thing and
Zatanna.
the Spectre and Zatanna and Deadman and who's the other one I'm missing? The Phantom Stranger.
Yes. And even I'll throw the Question in there just because he looks...
The Question...
It's a detective.
If you read, though, some Question books, he's way out there.
Yeah.
He's like Batman who's been left out to dry for too long.
Yeah. Almost tipping on Rorschach-ian...
yes. Also a Charlton character, the Question, And Rorschach... I don't know. I'm looking up at the screen. I don't know how I'm feeling this Florida painting. This is a real. Is this different for him?
Well, here's my thing about when I watch Bob Ross. Okay, I will throw it on, and if right away Bob Ross is smiling at the camera, and already he's painted some bullshit on. Man, I'm not watching this. I'm saving this episode as one of the last ones because I want to see a full shot.
Right.
But this right here, folks, we have the state of Florida. It's like a stencil almost that he's painting like a beach scene in the reproductive organ of the United States. And it is... it's rather disappointing, I guess.
It's weird.
But here's the thing, okay? One thing that Bob Ross likes to do is he doesn't like to waste space.
Yeah.
So after he peels this away, I guarantee you he's going to draw something on that white part.
Right.
It's just stylistically.
Yeah.
And it might save the painting.
Yeah.
And that's usually what happens, man. It's like
right.
he tells you a story while he's painting. Yeah. It's like a story within a story within a story. It's like you get the story of like the painting coming together. Then you have him telling you just random bullshit while he's making noises and painting pictures. And then you have the painting coming together itself, and when it's going to hit you off with that whoa. But it's very rare that any of Bob Ross's stuff doesn't do that. So I think he's ready here. Gonna pull it back just like that. All right. Okay. All right. The blue helps it out.
Right. So it's like kind of a stencil.
It's a stencil of Florida. It's like a blue background, a stencil of Florida, and inside of Florida is like a beach. Here we go.
Okay, so
see,
he's gonna tear up the blue square.
Yeah, okay. I knew he was gonna do something. It might not be much, but I guarantee you that Bob Rossi's gonna add a little something here. And he probably will tell you a little story on why he's doing it too. He's like, I once saw a guy do this, and I just thought it was so cool.
Well. So the last thing I'd say about the Doom that came to Gotham 2 is that it was I think a 4-issue series that must have run or whatever, and I never saw it on the stands. I've well established that I'm not really a single issue guy. I really just buy trades now, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. But basically, I belong to a Facebook group called the Mike Mignola Appreciation Station, and they just post Mike Mignola art every day, all day long. Mike Mignola stuff and Hellboy stuff and everything in between that he's ever drawn. And oh my God, has he drawn a lot?
Yeah.
Holy cow! Yep. And somebody posted, "Hey, on December 22nd, this book is popping up on Amazon. You're gonna want it." And I looked at it and said, "Hey, man, little Batman horror turn of the century." Yeah, well, I mean, as a trade, it just came out in December.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so relatively new on the scene, and I put it in my wish list, and Amazon emailed me when it became available, and I was like, $10, sure.
Radical.
You know, I'll buy anything of Mignola's for $10.
Right.
You know, and
awesome.
Yeah, so that was pretty solid. We really just have a few minutes left. Did you want to mention anything that you've been reading lately?
No. You know, I've had my head in a whole lot of different things. But I guess the most profound thing that I've read here recently is Brian Michael Bendis' book, Words for Pictures, that is essentially about writing for comics, right, and the industry in itself and everything that goes into it as a writer, even as an artist, as an inker, as a colorer. The writing process, everything. Folks, if you want to write comic books, I know I do, you're going to want to read this book, man. You know, it's just a perspective, you know, just a different perspective. And,
right.
And it's also, I think, compared to a lot of the other literature that's out there on the comic book industry, it's the one that really hits closest to what's going on now. You know, it's pretty honest to writers.
Well, like, and what's something that it says that you feel lines up with that statement that you just made?
I think that mainly, well, for one, the style of writing, you know, is so different than what it used to be, especially at Marvel. At Marvel, they had a style called the Marvel Way, which was basically Stan Lee, due to the fact that he was writing 12 books a month. Yeah. You know, he would essentially use an entire page, maybe double-spaced, one gigantic paragraph, laying out plotting the entire book, the issue. Mm-hmm. And he'd give it to the artist, Kirby, and it was up to Kirby to put together, like 32 pages of brilliance in telling Stan Lee's story by plot. Then Stan Lee goes in and adds the dialogue and the exposition by seeing what Kirby had thrown down.
Right.
How hard is that? Yeah. You know, you have this one idea in your head, and you sure as shit the king is going to drop something you did not expect. Right. What are you going to do? Yeah. You know, and now, because of the TV and the film influence that is you know, good or bad, been brought into the comic book industry, a lot of scripts now are written in full script, meaning... Right. You know, a page number, what's in each panel, the dialogue that's in each panel, and it's been a slow process for the style of writing for comic books to have evolved into that. But one real cool thing there that I get from is the fact that there's no wrong way to write a comic book. Mm-hmm. You know, if you've got an idea and you can put it out on a page and make it easy enough to figure out, you know, or understand. Or for an artist to understand, you know, then that's what you need to do. Matt Fraction in the book gives an example of like just base like I'm busy script, and I mean this is like, you know, all he's using are capital letters and lowercase letters, no punctuation whatsoever. You know, and it's just like, I mean, it took him probably like he said after I read that whole part, he was like, it took you about as long to read that as it took me to write it. You know, I was like, oh, okay. You know, so I kind of get to see how, like, you know, writers that have a lot of books going on, right? You got to find a way to shorten your shit up even more, formatting wise. Okay. And that's just something I love looking at formatted scripts, right? Like for film and for TV and for comics, because it's all different. Even though film and TV is generally kind of sort of the same. But at the same time, it's not. But comic book scripts. You know, I mean, Alan Moore. You've read an Alan Moore Watchmen.
Yeah.
You've seen page 1 of Watchmen.
Yeah, it's
and
single space,
the
whole, like, no
filled
paragraphs,
with text.
nothing. Yeah.
And Dave Gibbons has gone in and like just highlighted the sentences
Yeah.
that are relative to the 9 panels. Actually,
Yeah.
it's the first page, so it's just a splash.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
like so that's I think getting out of that is, you know, it also makes me want to like move out to Oregon and take his class for a semester.
Whose class?
Bendis. He's a teacher. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he teaches writing for comics at the University of Oregon.
I did not know that. How long has he been doing that?
I think he's been out there for a couple years now.
Really?
Yeah.
With all the other stuff that he does?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this is something that goes on semester.
Oh, it's offered every once in a while.
I'm pretty sure this is a course that either is taken once a year or like over the course of like a month in the summer or something.
I did not know that.
But it's so cool when he's talking about that stuff in the book and he tells all his kids right away, first day of class, tomorrow I want you to bring me, or next class I want you to bring me in one comic you love and one comic that you hate. And he says every single time, every course, someone's going to bring in a book that they hate that someone in the class brings in that they love.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's just the awesome thing about comics to me is that comics are no different than like music and movies and all that other stuff. You know, it's still, you know, you're going to have people that hate one band and absolutely, you know, some that love them, you know, just the same. You know,
Right.
It's the same way with comic books. I love Superman.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like Superman.
Yeah, you know, haters.
Right. And I mean, when I had my black and white outlook on comics and heroes and bad guys when I was a kid, I hated Batman because everyone loved Batman.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
gave me shit for being a Superman fan. And I'm like, are you kidding me? He could punch Batman in the face.
Yeah.
through his face.
Right. Yeah.
And Batman would not even be able to like say stop. You know, he would just get us out if that. You know, but Superman would not do that.
Right.
You know?
That's the saving grace.
And that's why I love Superman.
Right,
Batman, if he could punch somebody in the face through their face, he probably would do it if he gets mad enough.
Right.
Especially if you say something about mom and dad.
Oh boy,
you know?
yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I'm really digging the Bendis book. I haven't finished it yet. I'm sure I'll talk more about it once I get done with it. But it's visually alluring.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you're constantly learning stuff about the comic book industry that you didn't know.
Is
or
that
had
his
ideas
textbook?
Of. I mean, I would say,
Right?
I would think that any comic courses would need to offer that as the textbook because it is. I mean, I consider it essential reading to anybody that really wants to get into comic books. Yeah. For anybody to just really focused in on that, I think that would be that is essential reading. But Tom, it looks like we're wrapping up here.
Okay.
So folks, you know, that a few things for you to look into as far as I get comic books. We talked comics today, which is awesome, man.
Gotta bring it around.
That's right, man.
That's the reason for the season.
That's it, man. That is the Star Killer base of this.
Hello, I'm Matt. I am a radar technician. Next time. Well.
Yo, Matt sucks. See how much I've heard that since like that whole bit? But I love it. So anyway, folks, for Dr. Tom Lucas, I'm Matt DeSimone. This has been another episode of Matty Loves Podcast Volume 2. We will see you next time.
Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.